Today, seeing characters from completely different universes drop into the same video game feels like a weekly occurrence. But if you rewind to the 16-bit era, those kinds of crossovers would slam directly into a rigid wall of corporate secrecy. Following the massive success of the NES, Nintendo held an iron grip on the industry. They controlled an untouchable 80% of the video game market, with their mustachioed plumber Mario serving as the crown jewel of that empire. Sega needed a weapon to crack that armor. Their answer was the Sega Genesis, and a brand new mascot explicitly engineered with enough attitude to take Mario head-on, Sonic the Hedgehog. If you were a kid at the time, you felt this tension every day at recess. You were either a Nintendo kid or a Sega kid. You picked a side and you defended your hardware with your life. Game developers were completely caught in the crossfire of this rivalry. Nintendo kept their third-party partners on an incredibly tight leash. If you wanted to play Capcom's massive hit series Mega Man, you had to buy a Nintendo console, giving the Mario loyalists all the ammunition they needed in those schoolyard debates. The executives at the top dictated exactly what you could play and where you could play it. In that climate, the idea of Mario and Sonic ever sharing a screen was complete fiction. But keeping games locked to a single piece of plastic meant artificially limiting your own sales. Eventually, the developers making the games realized they had their own leverage. By 1993, the Sega Genesis was capturing a massive audience. Joe Morici, the vice president of marketing for Capcom USA, aggressively lobbied his bosses in Japan. He knew that ignoring Sega owners meant leaving money on the table, and he pushed Capcom to become an official Sega licensee. That push paid off. Capcom held a massive press conference at the Sofitel Hotel in California to announce they were breaking Nintendo's exclusive hold on their titles. And to sell the moment, the promotional art for the event featured Sega Sonic reaching out and shaking hands with Capcom's Mega Man. That single image sent a shockwave through the industry. It proved that truces were actually possible, provided developers were willing to flex their own market power to cross enemy lines. The next major shift in control took over a decade. At the 2005 E3 conference, Nintendo president Satoru Iwata revealed their new Wii console and publicly announced the desire for a brand new entry in their chaotic fighting series, Super Smash Bros. Masahiro Sakurai returned to direct the game. He knew that to top the previous installment, Melee, he had to look outside Nintendo's in-house roster. He reached out to legendary developer Hideo Kojima, officially inviting Solid Snake into the arena. But Sakurai didn't stop at calling his industry contacts. During development, Nintendo launched the Smash Bros. Dojo website. It operated as an incredibly rare, direct line of communication between the studio and the players themselves. On that site, they hosted an entirely open global poll. Nintendo essentially handed the microphone to the internet and asked millions of gamers worldwide exactly who they wanted to see in the new game. Millions of votes poured in, and one name dwarfed all the others: Sonic the Hedgehog. The volume was impossible to ignore. The corporate departments that spent the 90s fighting finally surrendered control, giving the audience exactly what they asked for. When Nintendo dropped the official trailer confirming Sonic's inclusion in Smash Bros. Brawl, the gaming community erupted. Seeing the blue blur finally standing face-to-face with Mario was a surreal payoff. This graph tracks the explosive consumer response. When Brawl launched in North America, the hype translated into the fastest-selling Nintendo game the region had ever seen. The title moved 874,000 copies on day one, clearing 1.4 million units by the end of week one. The ultimate reward for those players was the game's massive single-player mode, the Subspace Emissary. Here, fans finally got to watch these two former rivals fight alongside each other to save the universe as cinematic allies. This alliance made perfect sense for Sega's new reality. Having officially stepped away from building their own hardware, they were now surviving entirely as a third-party software developer, competing for space on store shelves. When Sonic stepped onto Nintendo's battlefield in 2008, he effectively buried the 16-bit console wars. It took over a decade, but the audience finally forced the two biggest rivals in gaming